So a lot of people don't see a way out. A lot of them
Mm.
just feel like they're never, ever, ever going to feel better, no matter how hard they try. And I was in the same place. Like, I just never thought it was going to be any better. I never thought that you were ever going to feel anything good. And everything, most of my life was manufactured outside of me: relationships, work, alcohol, drugs, sex, gambling, whatever. It's that journey into those uncomfortable. Like, the closer I got to the traumatic events, the closer I got to the abuse from the point of origin of feeling it emotionally, the freer I started to feel within myself. I tend to be pretty hard on myself, so I
Yeah.
use the
How's that
triggering
working?
words. It worked for a while, but then it
Yeah.
didn't anymore. Yeah, I mean, I guess hard on myself with the self-discipline. I'm just an emotional child. I don't like to be disciplined. I don't like to set limits for myself or boundaries within. And if I can't set them within myself, it almost was impossible setting them out in the world with other people.
Mm.
So I think there's a couple of different ways that I was hard on myself. It would beat myself up into the shame and, the self-hate. But then the hard part, getting difficult with myself, was to actually sit with the feelings and the emotions and discipline myself that way. I had
Mm.
to do that for a while, but after a certain amount of time, when you learn how to manage the emotions and deal with the processing of them and going in and becoming comfortable, you can start to ease up a little bit more and enjoy life. But I think most of us want to do this 365, 24/7. The faster we do it, the quicker we're going to get to the end. And it just doesn't work that way. It
Mm-mm.
has to be a balance. You have to be feeding your soul as you're going into the uncomfortable, fearful places. If you're not doing it in balance, you're never going to get there 24/7, 365, because you're not seeing anything else. You're just
Yeah.
looking at this place of lacking and deficiency and wanting to get someplace else, where kind of accepting where you're at and working through it with balance is a way better way to do this.
Mm. For sure. For sure. Like, look, I would say probably for the vast majority of my life, I just want to hack shit, like hack
Yeah.
it all, right? So I'm going to
Yep.
hack personal growth. I'm going to hack mindfulness. I'm going to hack success, right? No matter what, like I am going to find a hacky way to uh, just hack shit up. So,
It,
right? So I wanted it all to be really fast. Meanwhile, I had spent my entire life living in shame and story. So where I got to think like, okay, yeah, it's been 50 some odd years and I'm just going to change it all in a matter of months. Like,
and an easier, softer way to do it. That's what we were all looking for. Like,
yeah.
it was this book, it was this motivational speaker, it was all these little things that you think were gonna. I can't tell you how many books I've opened up with this is the answer, and I
Mm,
start rifling through the book, and I'm three-quarters of the way through, and I'm like, yeah, I don't feel any better. So I wasn't
mm,
doing the work. I understood this intellectually, but I never experienced it emotionally. Like, shadow work and original pain work and getting in there and getting into the dirty. Like, I didn't want to do that. I always thought
mm.
I could there's going to be a passage in the book and it's all going to click in my head and life's going to be easy and we're going to arrive at this point. But we never truly arrive, because there's constant growth there. And that's why figuring out your process for managing uncomfortable and fearful things, they're always going to come up in life unless you're just not moving forward. And all of us want to be free. We want to be free to express and be who we are. And you're never going to get to a point where it's just done, because life
Right.
happens. So if that was my thought process, this book is going to get me to this place, and then I could just sit on the bar lounger and watch TV, and life will be good. But it just
Yeah.
doesn't work that way.
Yeah. I found myself saying a lot of, I have done so much work. And the more that I heard myself say that, the more I realized I have I have so much work to do,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Uh, yeah. I mean, if I'm somebody who's saying, "Oh, damn, look, man, I'm so together. I have done all this work." I think that's great evidence of. You have a lot of work to do.
Yeah. If you think you've arrived, you still have more work
Yeah.
to do because you're just
Yeah,
never going to
exactly.
arrive. And there's an addictive, in a positive way, feeling to this work. When you start to impress yourself, when you do things that you didn't think you were able to do, and you look back and you're like, did I really just do that? Me? Seriously? That's such a great feeling, especially when there's no applause around, when nobody's there to validate you, and you learn how to validate yourself to get through the difficult things. And, as a grown man, I tell the story of how, it was almost agoraphobic. And I made it to the mailbox for 3 days, and then I made it to the corner. But those were goals at that point, and they were small and they seemed insignificant. But you have to start somewhere and just keep pushing yourself out of your comfort zone a little bit more and more, and you're going to keep building on that, and then you're not going to want to stop. It's getting through all this shit at the beginning that is so brutally painful, where you can't see an end in sight, but it is there. It does get better, and there becomes a balance where you start to understand your darkness. You start to understand your fears, and you figured out a way to slowly start moving through them. And then there's just joy on the other side.
So, I mean, I would hate for anybody who's watching our live or who's never experienced either a conversation between us or their own deep conversations to imagine us sort of like in the Seinfeld fashion, like yada-ing through all the shit and all the work that really goes into it. So know that it takes commitment and rigor and noticing your fear and noticing your love and all of the other pieces to get to, okay, I'm even going to take the tiniest of steps. It's not just like a nice little sailboat that goes along. I'm curious, what questions, like, did you have a burning question within you when you were like, okay, someday I know I want to work on my personal growth. I know I want to like resolve my whatever word you want to call it, resolve my trauma, heal, recover, wrestle with. Did you have like a burning question that was like either how do I or but what if?
My question was always like, why are you so fucked up? Like, that's the thing I kept saying over and over. It was like, why is this so difficult? Why is it so hard just to feel okay? Like, I couldn't understand. And then when I stopped mood altering and I was sitting in the shame and I was sitting in those uncomfortable feelings, like, I started to realize that every good feeling I had came from something outside of me. And that's when I started to realize I had to go in. But I just kept wondering, why is this so difficult? Why do people seem like they're functioning at high levels? And I can't go to the supermarket until 11:45 when it closes at 12 because there's nobody in the store and it's too overwhelming. Like, I couldn't understand how incompetent I was because there were certain areas of my life, they were small bubbles, but I excelled in them. And I made this safe cocoon, and I felt like a rock star in it because it was safe and I controlled it. It was when those things went away and I had to actually get out in the real world, I realized that I really wasn't a very competent human being in a lot of areas. So a lot of it was trying to build competency with small or simple things that I felt like, most people could handle easily. And for me, I was just like a scared child.
Okay. I want to push back on your story.
Yeah.
I want to push back on your story that you weren't competent. Were you married?
I was for about 10 years.
Do you have kids?
I have 2 kids.
Did anyone ever say, like, you are not a functioning, contributing parent or spouse?
Well, I had pretty much perfected my family system role at that point, and I was clean and sober. I had a business, I had a wife, I had a house, I had 2 kids. I was a good father, I was a good husband. I never gave to myself. I gave to this image of what I needed to be as a child to get that reflection back. But it was a lot of small areas. I mean, not that parenting and marriage is small, but my world was very small. If you put me into like high powered situations, I would have crumbled. I only knew this very small little place. I was very high functioning in it, but there was nothing left over. Hey, Andrea.
Hey, Andrea. Okay, I hear what you're saying, yet there's seriously some excellent skill and showing up that happened for you within the context of family. So to say like I was not competent and like clearly this double life, you have perfected the trauma hider. Like so my podcast, as we know, is called the Trauma Hiders Club. Like, dude, the ultimate trauma hider.
Absolutely.
You showed the fuck up.
I was shiny, I was glossy, I was presentable. I didn't even know that I was miserable. I didn't know that I wasn't living an authentic life until I lost everything in 18 months. And I realized that the only place I shined was in that family system, and that ended. And then I felt like I was nothing because the life that I had spent forever building evaporated in 18 months. So then it was like, okay, you were really good in this part of your life. You excelled, but you had nothing else. And when all that went away, who was I without it? And that's where the building started. That was a serious decline. Like I went to a place that I didn't even know was humanly possible, how bad it felt. But bottoming out and sitting in that shame and realizing that, you know, that false self, I was this great guy in my head. And I believed it to be true. And it wasn't, I blew it up out of proportion in my ego. And when my ego was taken away because everything that I built, I was left with self. And I didn't like myself.
So my big looming question, probably from the time I was, let me think, probably from the time I was in my 20s. So my childhood sexual abuse started when I was 10. But probably when I was in my 20s, I started to imagine like, oh, what if I start to do some work around this? Like I was like dating and in relationship, and then fast forward, I'm married. And my big question was like, what if I really go deep? And what happens is I fucking fall apart and I'm in a corner in pieces, or that part of me that is in one piece is just fucking rocking. My husband doesn't know who I am anymore. My children don't know who I am anymore. And I'm just a fucking mess. Like that was what, for me, that was what I think was probably my biggest blocker of really diving in. And that was, what if I am unrecognizable, unrelatable, unlovable, scary shit of a person?
Yeah. So you chose to go dark, go deep.
Oh, yeah. I mean, well, I think I chose and the choice chose me.
Right.
I think, right?
It's the whole chicken and the egg thing right there.
Yeah. I mean, look, I was very deep into my marriage. I was already in my 50s and I got married in my late 20s. So like I was deep into my marriage. My kids were mostly were grown. Yes, it was a choice. In fact, I saw that my friend Sarah Gibbons joined, and it was in a conversation with Sarah. I had been doing some work already, but there was something that Sarah and I were having a conversation, and we were focused on her, and I asked her what her number one priority was. We were talking about how priorities are like, you can only have one. You can't have 14 because then they're not priorities. And Sarah is also a coach. And so we were just doing some peer coaching. And I said, what is your number one priority? And I'm sorry, I don't remember what yours was. But anyway, she turned the table on me and said, "What is yours?" And like word vomit, it came out of my mouth. And I said, to uncouple myself from my childhood sexual abuser. Now, that was only like 4 years ago,
Right.
3 years ago. And what happened there was I was like, I am going to, come hell or high water, finally find the right therapy modalities, the right support people to really dig into this shit that I've been kind of playing with on the edges. Yeah, so that was.
So one of your big fears was that if you did this work and you got into it, the changes you were going to make, you were going to be unrecognizable to the people around you, and basically have them see you a different way and may not be compatible anymore.
Well, yes, in the way that I would be a fucking mess, fragile, just in pieces.
Right. So your role would have to just diminish because
Yes.
you're doing so much work on yourself that you can't keep everything up that the way it was going.
Yeah, that's using a lot of logic. Here's how I saw it.
Why would we use logic?
How I saw it was, okay, what if I really dig in and I reveal these parts of myself that I've been afraid of for years and years, that are like full of rage and hate and filth and anger and nauseousness, and what if that's really who I am? What if that is who I really am?
Yeah.
Well, that's not who I've shown the world to be. So, what the fuck? Who am I then? And I'm not the person my husband married. I'm not the person who raised my kids. I really wasn't concerned about my, like my family of origin. That wasn't really a concern of mine, but like, I am going to be left alone, unlovable, and alone, again, alone, fragile, broken, more broken. Yeah.
So would you say it was those parts of you that you found that weren't acceptable, that you didn't incorporate in, that was kind of pushed to the side? You had to start to bring those parts back into you. And, for me, I was all shiny and glossy and tried to do it all perfect. And I had to bring in the dark side of me, the parts of me that I wasn't allowed to see. And then nobody loved me for these things when I was growing up. How can anybody love them for me as an adult when I don't love these parts of me?
Yeah.
In fact, I don't even acknowledge that they exist. So when you incorporate that back in, and people around you start to see these parts of you that they never saw before, it's very confusing. And there's almost like that, who are you? And I don't know if I even like you anymore. Mm-hmm. Like I got a lot of that from friends. It was just like, honestly, it was like, you're a miserable fuck. Why do you even bother coming out? And then for me, it was, maybe I just am miserable and maybe I'm never going to be joyful. Maybe it was all an act. Until peeling away the layers and getting in there is joy underneath, and it doesn't need to be manufactured.
Yeah, you're fascinating. You're like the weaver of trauma.
You don't want to be up in this.
Such a thing.
You don't want to be up here. It's brutal.
Yeah. No, look, I get what's up there, but it's interesting because what I'm finding really fascinating is you brought forth all of your stuff once you were willing to take a look. You brought forth all of your stuff, whereas, as I see it, as at least I've called it, a trauma hider leads like a dual life, right? And that is the life that we want everyone to see, and then there is the person we are inside. And that person we are inside probably has like a "hello, my name is" sticker that says, if you really knew me, you'd fucking run.
Run.
Yeah, exactly. You would bolt. you would fucking bolt right now. So, yeah, but what I see in you is you were who you were, and then your world fell apart, but you were willing to bring miserable Joe into the universe. That's really significant. That is, that's fucking courage.
Thank you. I didn't make the choice to turn in. I just had nothing left. And I was miserable, broke, homeless, divorced. Everything was gone. And I just kept sitting in it. And I was two people most of my life, especially when I was younger. I started a business when I was young. I was a good boy in the neighborhood, but I'm blacked out drinking and getting into bar fights in the evening. It was like I had to sacrifice who I was to get to be loved, to feel that love. And then I was resentful, and I didn't know how to feed my soul. So I did it through drugs, alcohol, gambling, fighting, whatever. So there was two sides. I mean, I think for me, the journey when I hit that place of homelessness and agoraphobia and on the couch, those two places started to kind of come together, and it was like this dialogue. And it's like, I don't want to perform anymore. I don't want to pretend to be happy. I don't want to pretend to be nice. I don't want to pretend. Like, I am a miserable SOB, and I am going to be this until it lifts, if it lifts. And it was almost the marriage of the two places. So I'd live happy, glossy, shiny as much as I could, and I denied this other part of me. And by denying it for so long, it got so much bigger and so much energy that it took over the nice guy. And miserable guys showed up, and it was like, you were paying way too much attention to nice guy. We're going to sit here, miserable guys taking over for a while. You are absolutely done until we can process and get through this. And I didn't think I was ever going to get there. And somehow it just kept pushing up. It just kept pushing up. And eventually it turned.
That's amazing. It is like what you just described is what resistance looks like.
Yeah.
Right?
Fuck yeah.
Yeah. Try to cut me off. I'm going to fucking fight back and fight so hard that I'm going to win. I'm going to prevail. That's what resistance does.
Yeah, it took me over, it kicked my ass, and I paid the feelings the attention that they deserved. And I don't feel like I have this murderous rage that is right about here. Like when I was younger, I was afraid that I was just going to snap. Like I've kind of worked through a lot of the anger and incorporated in it instead of taking anger and burying it. And then, in every 6 months I explode like a lunatic for no apparent reason. You kind of manage it a little bit as it's coming along. You have to pay attention. The more you deny the feelings, the stronger they get. So that anxious feeling you're sitting there with, that uncomfortable feeling, that fear is all emotions that is saying, hey, knock, knock, you need to take a look at something. But what do? I chase pills with alcohol, and I run as fast as I can to keep 10 steps ahead of it. When I stopped and started paying attention, I hated my life, but I found a way to find some love and compassion.
Yeah, really incredible. There's a question for you, Joe. How long after your bottom did it take you to get here today?
Which bottom? There was like 9 of them. The last bottom was about 4 years ago, and I worked my ass off in the last 4 years. I did not mood alter. I sat with the feelings. I found a good therapist. I worked through it. I kept reliving the experiences. I journaled. I cried. I screamed. I spent a lot of time alone working on myself, building myself up and doing the work with a good therapist. I had a great mirroring face. I would say, this is how I feel and this is the way I look at myself. And she would go, okay, I can see that. But have you looked at it this way, this way, this way, and this way? And I'm like, why fuck would I look at it that way? That was the way out, was the work, to have to go in and I really truly feel how worthless that I had felt that I'd covered over for so long. So I guess it's almost 4 to 5 years now at this bottom. And this is the last bottom, I am convinced. I don't know if I got any more in me.
Well, do you get to choose?
I do not. I do not.
I think you do.
Well,
You get to choose that you don't have another bottom.
you do, but sometimes you don't know. Like I thought I wasn't going to hit another one, and then the perfect storm came, and it bottomed me out. So I don't want to walk through this life thinking I'm bulletproof, and that something can't happen that's going to take me down. I get taken down weekly. I just don't get taken down that far.
That's right.
Because I recognize it and I see it, and that self-talk, when something happens, it doesn't go my way, or I make a mistake, or I look stupid, or I did something ridiculous, I don't shame and hate on myself for the next 9 months. I do it for about 4 hours, and then I go, okay, you're done beating yourself up. Now we're going to pick yourself up. So it's learning your process.
Yeah. Yeah. Here's my question. How are you getting support today?
I have a therapist.
Yeah.
I have a therapist, and I have some really good people in my life that I've never had before that I trust. That there's a really good give and take relationship where I can be me and say what I feel, and I don't get judged and I don't get shamed, and I'm embraced for it. So the more I've opened up in my world and have better boundaries and learning how to trust, the right people seem to be showing up. It's kind of miraculous in a way. Because if these people showed up like 3 years ago, I've been like, get out of here. You think I'm going to open up to you? Because then you're going to go and you're going to, make fun of me, and I can't trust you with it. It's like everything from my past. But the more you can trust yourself, the more you can trust others, and the right people do show up. And it's great. It really is.
I don't know, Joe. I'm just going to say a couple of things about that. One, maybe you couldn't see it before.
Oh, definitely not. Definitely not.
You couldn't see them, and you couldn't let them in.
Nope.
And the you that you're bringing out into the world is attracting those people to you today.
Yes.
Yeah.
I've learned how to be vulnerable with myself more, which made me vulnerable with other people. And just by being vulnerable, you're open. And the opportunities in life when you're able to be more vulnerable show up way more. I'm sure people have crossed my paths and I just shut them out because I didn't trust. I can't hand you the keys to my kingdom because I don't have the lock, Now I know how to close that door if it gets be too much, where I used to not be able to do that. So if I just connected with somebody, I would open myself up and go, here's everything. I'm throwing it out on the table. You have complete access. Now you do it smarter and better.
Okay, so one lucky girl asks, any secret key points to look for with a therapist? I'm stalling because I'm afraid of getting a bad one.
I get that so much. Oh my God. It's like fear of commitment, because if I get the therapist, I don't like them, then I'm going to have to fire them, and I can't make anybody else on this planet feel bad.
Yeah.
Just keep going until somebody feels right. Go in for a consultation. I told the story when I hit bottom a few years ago. I fired several therapists because they weren't right for me. And how did I know that? Is because they took me out of my feelings. They wouldn't take the ride with me. I felt shamed for what I was saying because they were uncomfortable. And then I found a woman, and she just kept sitting through everything. And I was like, when's she going to take me out of this? And she didn't. And I stayed with her. She was remarkable and instrumental in getting me where I am today.
Yeah. I would say, having had a lot of not good therapists, I would say, one, trust your gut. This is not, if you feel yourself performing to have that person understand you, or or to make that person laugh or like you or love you. Like that is just showing up in a performative way, and that's not your job.
And what'd you say when we did the interview? If it feels like
a coffee date, fuck it. It's not therapy. It's coffee. So if it's just like, oh, that felt good because I had a really good chat. If you even use that language of, I had a really good chat with my therapist. I mean, I suppose if you're there to learn how to chat, then that's a good thing, but that's not what this work is. Yeah. So
it should be uncomfortable. It should be challenging. There should be a flow to it and a connection. You need to feel safe too.
Yes, that's what I was going to add. And this person needs to be adept at building a safe space for you. And you decide that you feel safe. They don't. Right. So we had another question, and it is, have either of you experienced the compulsion to repeat? Oh, no, wait. Before we get to that one, I want to go, Andrew had a question. How do you work with your changes with a spouse that doesn't know what you're going through, healing through childhood trauma?
Yeah. I'm going to leave this to you because all I'm going to say is there's a reason I'm divorced.
Yeah. Yeah. So, Andrew, before my husband was my husband, he knew that I had experienced childhood sexual abuse. So that was like already on the table. And then with each step that I doing the work around it, I was open and I shared. So how do you work with your changes with a spouse that doesn't know what you're going through? I would say if your spouse doesn't know, that's adding another layer. That's like it's almost like another trauma on top of it. And by the way, if you want to connect around talking about it or why you're not, I'm happy to do that. I think it's just adding another layer onto a whole lot of hurt that probably would benefit. Well, I understand why you're doing it, and I acknowledge that you are. There's a heartbreak in it. There's a heartbreak in it for me. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it becomes easier to start sharing when the shame lessens and you're able to own it more. For me, when I started to talk about stuff that people were close to me, I felt like I spoke it too soon because I didn't have a handle on it. And almost for me, I was handing it to them, going, I'm fucked up. Here's why. Please help me.
Yeah.
What I learned was, let me figure it out and get a better handle on it. Let me get comfortable with it living in my body. And then when I had less shame about it, it was easier to kind of let people know, like important people in my life. So I don't know if that helps.
But. Yeah, I hear what I like what you're saying, especially around the sharing for the sake of spraying your shit at people. Yeah. Right? That's not helpful to you or to them. Right? You cannot trauma dump. Right. Which is like taking a big shit on someone and releasing your trauma. It doesn't work that way. But that wasn't my impression of what Andrew was asking. Healing through childhood trauma. If it's that you're getting support and you're not talking about it, I think that there's some opportunity there. And again, happy to connect. Okay, so let's go to Gina. Have either of you experienced a compulsion to repeat your trauma? If so, how did you identify and address? So my trauma is childhood sexual abuse, and I did not have the compulsion to be abused again, nor did I have the compulsion to commit the repulsive trauma that I experienced. No.
I've had patterns that I've repeated to fulfill what I thought was my truth, that I wasn't worthy and I wasn't lovable. And the self-sabotage, even though I'm not big on that word, but it's easy to get to. You're going to leave anyway. I was convinced, no matter who you were. So to control the pain and the rug being pulled out from under me, I would slowly start withdrawing, and the relationship would deteriorate and they would leave, and then I would want to go chase them to get them back. And I did that for decades. And once I started to look at the pattern, I was able to not repeat it. If I feel like I'm doing that in present day, I have the knowledge of you just don't feel good enough and you think she's going to leave, so you're going to save the effort and the pain later. I get to control the hurt by this slow thing. So it's looking at your patterns and trying to identify them makes it harder to repeat them.
Yeah, I love the way you just answered that question. I went so literal. I'm sorry Eugenia. I'm not sure if I'm saying your name right, but I went so literal on your question. So if I answered the way Joe did, holy shit. I mean, I have stories and patterns and survival mechanisms that follow me through to today. You name it. Making myself too small, making myself too big, making sure you like me, making sure you don't like me, wanting connection, disconnecting from everything, you name it, checking out, losing before I can lose, making sure I win in some bizarre way. Like, yes.
Yeah.
I guess that is repeating my trauma over and over again. So it's a great question. And,
until we understand it, we're going to keep unconsciously repeating it, and it's painful. Like the 37th time you've done it, it's like, really, I haven't learned yet because I haven't gone into the origin.
Yeah. And you know what? Here's the thing: like, even if we've done deep work, we fuck up.
Absolutely.
Right? We fuck up on a daily basis, so it doesn't all just go away. So Miguel wants to go live with you about your experience, about his experience. So Joe, you get to have another live with Miguel.
Okay. All right. Okay. Perfect. We'll set something up.
Sacred Smoko, maybe it's Australia. How do you discern who are the right friends and how you deal with personal questions you don't want to answer from intrusive people? Do you have any statements prepared?
Well, the right friends, the more you get to know who you are, the more work you do on yourself, the more you make the choices of people. When I don't feel good and I feel lonely and I'm sad, I pretty much accepted anybody who was willing to spend 20 more minutes with me. So it didn't matter who it was. I just didn't want to be sad and lonely. When you start to feel good alone, you get to choose more people consciously in your life. If they're making you feel bad, if you're second guessing yourself, if you're showing up in ways that you don't feel comfortable, they're probably not the right people. What you want is nice, honest, genuine, mirroring faces. What kind of person is this? Is this a good person? If I feel like something's off, let me pay attention to my intuition, because most of us don't. It's, I need this, I need, but my intuition's telling me this is bad, but my desire and my needs are saying, fuck it, we're just going in anyway. Yeah. So paying attention to your body reactions when you're around people. Questions you don't want to answer from intrusive people, find something that you feel comfortable with saying. What I do, or used to do, was I would lay down, if I had a confrontation or I had to set a boundary, I would think about it. And I would play it out in my head, and I would discover the feelings that came up, and I would deal with those feelings. And I would find a way of doing it that I felt comfortable, that wasn't non-threatening or make the other person defensive. I needed to feel comfortable before I went and did it. You do not have to answer any question that you don't want to, period.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I always say to my clients, just because someone asks a question doesn't mean you have to answer it.
Right.
It doesn't work like that. It does not work like that. There's not some obligation as humans that we have to answer a question. So interesting. A few years ago, I think when I really started to get deep into this work, I let go of a significant amount of friends. Like actually had a call with, I don't know, maybe it was 10 or 11 people and said, I'm doing some work. And I've noticed that my energy, there's a big energy leak when we're together. And I don't like who I am. And I don't like where our focus is when we're together. And so I'm going to take myself out of the equation and continue to do my own work. And so it may have been in like 2016 or 2017 that happened. And I have no social life. I mean, thank God for the pandemic. No, the truth is, the friends that, boundaries keep some things in and don't allow others to come in. The friends that are within are the friends I want within. And as I make new connections, I allow or don't allow them in. And in terms of like statements prepared, it really, like, I made it about me. And I made it about my, I don't want to use the word journey, but like where I was looking, and that I didn't like who I was in the context of this friendship. So I'm going to go do my work. And that was kind of the end. So Andrew says after therapy, he sits in his car for 10 to 15 minutes before driving. I feel you, Andrew.
All I'm thinking is, it's only 10 or 15. I used to sit there for like 2.5 hours.
Right.
I just like decompressing, processing, and then getting ready to get back into the world again, because it was such a great place for therapy for me, where it was just like, why can't the rest of the world be this easy?
Yeah.
You know, meaning easy, being understood.
Yes, that's a big one. Being understood. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And Andrew, he also wrote 30 years of silence, then 3 years ago it all came out. I hear you, brother. So for me, my abuse started when I was 10, and I didn't come out and tell my parents till I was 21. And then I didn't tell anyone. And then at 21, I told my parents, and that became a second trauma. And
wow, yeah.
Yeah. And then I had a lot of shitty therapy. Yeah, so I hear you. And my podcast is actually, for me, the podcast, the Trauma Hiders Club, like the mission of my podcast is to normalize the conversation around trauma. So I talk about my own experience at 10 years old at the hands of my father's father being molested. And now it's like I feel free and not like spraying shit at people like, that's what happened to me and now you should own it and deal with it.
What was the biggest catalyst to feeling free from it for you?
Well, there were a couple of things. One was I noticed, for one, so many of the things in my life that held me back were my own stories around my trauma, right? Like I'm unlovable, I'm unworthy, I'm unwanted, all those kinds of stories. And I did, as a executive and leadership coach, I never put anything out there about, I am someone who can go with you I can go to the shithole with you. Like I never said that. However, the people who were in my orbit all had their own shit stories and their own holdbacks and their own experiences that were getting in the way of their next level of success. And so I started putting it together. We all have shit. I mean, I knew that, but we all have shit. Then add on top of it the pandemic. Now we have a collective trauma. Right? Now, like, we have to fucking start talking about this thing. We do all sorts of things to build people up, especially in a, like, not that my focus is only in a corporate setting, but in a corporate setting, there's a whole lot to develop leaders, but nobody's talking about, oh, you know, you bring every piece of who you are to the workplace. So we better start acknowledging that every piece of you are includes the parts of you that you feel broken, unwanted, unlovable, unworthy, etc. So the freedom came from talking about it. The freedom, yeah, and I mean, the freedom came from the work. The courage came from talking about it. The surrender and peace came from being on the other side.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's coming out of hiding. It's shining a light on it. It's getting in there, re-experiencing the feelings, reframing it, grieving. I mean, there's so much to it, but we feel bad enough from where we came from. Why would we want to go back in and feel bad again, or even worse?
Yeah.
Because running from it makes it worse.
Right.
It will catch up with you at some point. Every one of my addictions failed at some point. I was still left with the same fucking problems. So getting in there, you're going to feel worse before you feel better.
Yeah.
But when you start to come out that other side and you start to know who you are and you start to live the life that you have envisioned and you have worked for, you start to feel good about you. Usually when you get to that point, you look around, there's really not too many people in your life left. But that's not necessarily a bad thing all the time, because you have you. Instead of feeling like you need to fit in somewhere,
oh yeah,
you learn how to belong to self. And when you learn how to belong to self, you do not need to fit in. You will attract and connect with like-minded people. And your world never gets that big, because the quality you have within your circle is way more than enough.
Yeah, absolutely. Beautiful. Hey, let me ask you a question. What would 8-year-old Joe say about you today?
Fucking way to go, man. I knew you could do it.
Really nice.
Yeah.
Really nice. That's great.
Yeah.
I love
and
that.
And it goes the same way now. Instead of hating on them like I always had, I have understanding and compassion. And that's a big, big, big part of this, is having understanding and compassion. And as an adult, you need to look at yourself as an emotional child.
Yeah.
How would I treat my 5-year-old daughter or son if they were struggling with this? Would I beat the shit out of them emotionally the way I do myself? No. I would be there for them. I would nurture them. I would hold them. I would do whatever I thought was good and positive for them. Why can't I do that for me? Because I hate me. Well, I have to stop hating me. And that is painfully difficult, to stop hating yourself, because the self-hate controls the shame.
Yeah. For me, like my 10-year-old self, my 10-year-old self would, or does, even on a daily basis, have a kind of a two-pronged thing, which is like, fuck yes, we are warriors, and also like, and now we can rest.
Yeah.
And it's glorious.
Isn't that the craziest part about this? I was sitting here before and I'm like, there's nothing's on fire. I don't need to worry about anything. I don't get those moments often. And when they happen, I'm almost like, wait, everything's calm and peaceful. Oh no, we're good. We're allowed to have this. We can like ease into it. Like it's giving yourself a break, not having to be moving at the speed of light 24/7 just not to feel. Like being able to sit down, and if bad feelings come up, you can still sit with them.
Yeah.
You're going to wish they were never there, but they're always going to be there to some degree. So when are you going to start getting comfortable with them?
Yeah. Yeah. I've talked about it on my podcast. I wish everyone had like a magical periodic chart of elements that actually was a chart of feelings, because I'm someone who didn't allow myself to feel my feelings. And probably part of my family structure also did not allow for that. But I made that decision too. And so for me, when feelings come up, I'm starting, this is, I would say over the past 2 years, starting to love that, because there's a creative process for me. What is this? What is, not only what is the feeling, but what is the sensation in my body? What do I make of it? What do I want to do with it? Do I want to explore further? Do I want to release it? So feelings have become a fun little friend.
It's like this crazy emotional jigsaw puzzle.
Yeah.
And you just start to put the pieces together, and you start to get good at it.
Yeah.
Where something that would take me 9 months to process, I'm doing like 3 days. And
Nice.
when those pieces come together, there's a lightness, and there's this air, and this light bulb goes on, and you're just like, oh, that seems so simple now. All right, we don't have to feel this anymore. We get it. And the feelings will continually come up for that issue. But when they come up, you're like, oh, yeah, I know what that is. I was afraid of this because that happened. All right, you know what? We can continue on our day. We don't have to stop and lay down for 14 hours until it passes.
Right. It's like, hello, agony. Hello, pain. Hello, fear. Hello, ecstasy. Whatever the thing is, they're there for a reason. Yeah. Guess what time it is?
Oh, it's shit show time.
It's shit show time. We actually planned this around the primetime sedition hour. So
yeah, I will not be tuning in. I'm going to go get on my bike and go down Broadway.
That's
I can't.
Far healthier.
My life is way too nice right now to be caught up in this hate and anger.
Yes, that is a very healthy choice. I honor you and your good choices. I'm drawn in right now. Yeah.
All right. Well,
let's do this again.
Absolutely. It was great. I hope everybody who was watching and listening enjoyed it. I know I did. So
me too.
All right, everybody, have a great night and enjoy your weekend.
Enjoy. Bye-bye.
Take care, Karen.
You too. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.